Welcome, everybody. It is 12 o'clock, day two. We've got Alex from Greenwich and Finn from LocalGov Drupal and Open Code. I think Alex is mainly going to be talking about using LocalGov Drupal with Outpost to build a user-led directory community services, and Finn's going to add his little tuppence worth at a certain point. Thanks for coming, everyone. Feel free to have lunch and nibble away as you're listening in. And thank you both, Alex and Finn, for promoting it and putting on the event. Alex, I think you were like the first submission for LocalGov Drupal Week. I want to give you praise for that. Nice one. You led and others followed. Big thanks to our sponsor, Home Connections. They are also owned and led by local authorities and housing associations. Home Connections is a social purpose company supporting a fairer housing sector, which is much needed at the moment. And also a big thanks to our council and supplier subscribers, without you, we would not be able to put on events like this because I would not be paid for my time. And also our supporting partner, Netcall, all of whom have contributed a lot. Over to Alex and Finn for the session. I will be in the background in case of support, but Finn, you will be outroing. So go for it, Alex.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. And hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming along today. I do actually have a bit of a cold that I can't seem to shake off, so apologies if I sound a little croaky throughout this. But I am really excited to share with you some work that we're doing at Greenwich on this topic of community directories. But before I get into it, let me start by introducing myself. So I'm Alex. I'm a senior product manager in the digital team at the Royal Borough of Greenwich. So my job is to work with a team of researchers, designers, developers, and service owners to build products that improve the experience of residents in the borough. And today I'm going to show you one of these products that we're currently building, which is our new directory of community services, which we're building with LocalGov Drupal and another open source product called Outpost. So I kind of want to take you on the journey that we went on, because I know that a lot of you might be somewhere on that same journey, and hopefully give you some ideas for how you could approach it as well. So the session should be quite informal. I guess it will follow a bit of a show and tell format. I'm going to talk for a bit, show you some stuff. Finn's going to do a bit of a demo, and then we'll have a bit of a chat at the end. So let's get started. So I want to start by having a bit of a chat about the problem that we're trying to solve. And that is, how do you make it easy for residents to find and connect to support in their local community? And solving this problem is really important for local authorities. We want residents to live their healthiest and their happiest lives. And the voluntary and community sector plays a massive role in helping those who are most in need, with everything from helping people financially to giving people opportunities to make new friends and tackle social isolation. So ensuring that residents are able to find and connect to this community support is really important. But we know that for a lot of people, it's not clear what support is available to them, or they don't know where to look for it. Lots of local support is run by quite small groups or individuals, perhaps from a local cafe or perhaps an informal online meeting once a month. And lots of these places won't have much of a footprint, be it either digital or physical, that makes it easy for people to find out about it. And we know that this issue particularly impacts disabled people and older people. 1 in 4 disabled people in Greenwich don't know where to look for information about services or activities. So, how do we go about trying to solve this problem? Well, surprise, surprise, I'm going to talk about community directories. And so directories, and by that I mean a place which lists local services and activities and details of how to access them, feels like a really good starting point solving this problem. Having a central place which lists all of the support available, which people know and they can trust, should be like a really valuable thing. And that's why lots of local authorities do have some sort of directory. At Greenwich, we have our Greenwich Community Directory. But we know that often directories actually fail to meet the needs of the people that use them. They're quite a good idea in practice, but in reality, they don't just quite cut it. So we did loads of research with residents, with staff and local professionals to understand really how well was our directory meeting the needs of the people it was actually intended to be used by. And from this, we heard some things come up over and over again. The first was that our directory was full of information that was out of date or irrelevant. We even had like Christmas dinner recipes listed on there. And this combined with information that was visibly out of date led people to feel like they just couldn't trust the directory and so wouldn't use it. The second was that when people did use the directory, they told us it was quite hard to find what they were actually looking for. And this is because the way we were categorizing services wasn't consistent, we often had duplicates, and things like the search just didn't work well. And we also heard that for people who don't know what they're looking for, scrolling through pages and pages of directory listings just wasn't that useful. And then finally, when we spoke to staff who need to maintain the directory or people in the community who run services and have access to the directory, they told us the process of maintaining current directory information was really quite painful and involved lots of workarounds. So they often just avoided doing it altogether. From the research that we did, we felt like we could still see a need for a directory. There was still value in having a place which residents and professionals could use to understand the local support. But we knew that we needed to change quite a bit if we wanted it to actually help people. And specifically, we realized we need to achieve these three things. First was that we need to ensure that the content on our directory is relevant and up to date. Without that, people just won't trust the directory and won't use it. Then we need to make it much easier to find things on the directory, even for those who don't know what they need. We need to provide different ways for people to find out about local services based on their own context. And then finally, we need to make it more efficient to maintain and update for staff. We need to give people better tools that help them keep the directory up to date. So as part of our project, we knew that we'd be moving off the legacy platform that our directory was sitting on. And this platform was preventing us from achieving these goals. It was quite outdated, it lacked any kind of flexibility. So choosing the right technology, giving us like a toolkit to help us build a better directory was really important for us. And we needed to really think about like how do we collect and maintain information about local services that we put on the directory? If we can't find a sustainable way to do that, we're not going to be able to keep content up to date, and we're not going to be able to create better end-to-end journeys that actually help our users. So if we break that down to maybe like one more level of detail, these were the sorts of things that we needed from our directory. So the first was that we needed it to be quick and easy for council staff to add, edit, and approve service information that goes on the directory. This really felt like one of the key things we needed to get right, as without this, we didn't really stand any chance of sustaining our new directory. Then we needed to make sure that we're capturing the right information about a service. We need to ensure that we have the right level of detail in each listing on the directory so residents can really understand the service that's being offered to them. Next was that we need the admin area of our directory to be accessible to some people outside the council. So at Greenwich, we've chosen with this model where we give people in the community who run local services access to the directory so they can maintain the information. Now, this does come with some challenges, but ultimately, they're the people with the knowledge of the service. They're going to know when it changes and they're going to know the updates that need to happen. We've also found some really interesting opportunities with this approach at Greenwich, such as working with volunteers, where we have this role called community champions, who are residents embedded in the community. And we think working with them, they could play a really key role in helping us maintain our directory. That means if we want to give them access, we need it to be really quick and easy for these people as well to maintain information on the directory. Some people in the community might not be that confident with using technology, so we need to think even harder about the tools we give them if we want them to contribute to our directory and help us keep it up to date. And then finally, it needs to be compliant with Open Referral Data Standard. So this is kind of to ensure we're setting ourselves up for the future. This was a really important point for us. The Open Referral Data Standard is a government-endorsed data standard, which is essentially like a set of rules for how we break down information about local services. And data standards are kind of that foundation that allow us to share data with each other, be that other local authorities, other organizations, government departments, anyone. If we're using data standards, that becomes a lot easier. So that, like in a nutshell, was kind of what we needed from our directory. And luckily, we came across this product called Outpost that did these things really well. So Outpost is a free open source product that's been designed to do one thing and do that one thing really well, which is manage information about community services. It was originally built by FutureGov, now TPX Impact, for Buckinghamshire Council's Family Information Service website. But since then, it's been used by a number of different local authorities and developed even further. And there's loads of cool things that Outpost does, which I'll show you with a demo in a second. But let me take a few moments just to focus on a couple of them. So first is that Outpost has this really nice, simple interface for managing information about local services. It uses lots of familiar patterns from the gov.uk design system, and it really kind of strips back that experience to what it needs to be. It also has different views tailored to different user types so that people only see the information they need to, and it keeps things nice and simple. Because Outpost is its own product, it then means that the people who run local services can manage their own data without logging into other council systems. And then this data is shared via an API with any system that wants to use it and does so using the Open Referral Data Standard. This means that we can then quickly use the information we have in Outpost to build any sort of product that we want to, should we desire. So at Greenwich, we felt like Outpost would be a really great product to help us build our directory. But Outpost is only a place to manage information about local services. Outpost itself doesn't create an actual directory website for you. Now, we knew we wanted to use LocalGov Drupal for building the public-facing directory. Alongside this project, we were also redeveloping our main council website, and we chosen to use LocalGov Drupal for that. And so we knew using that for this would help us build the kind of experience that we'd been prototyping for our directory. So we just needed to prove that we could do one thing, which was essentially get the data from Outpost into LocalGov Drupal. And now, happily, we can do that. So as part of our work, we've been building a module that allows Outpost data to be easily integrated into LocalGov Drupal. Now, Finn and Eeks have done all of the hard work behind that, and that is now part of LocalGov Drupal, so anyone can use it as well. So that was kind of the tech stack that we settled on at Greenwich. Outpost for managing information about service listings, and then LocalGov Drupal to actually build the public-facing directory itself. So I'm going to try and seamlessly stop showing this and show you Outpost instead. So bear with me a second. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So this is Outpost. This is our instance at Greenwich. And this is kind of the main dashboard when you log into Outpost. And from here, you can see some kind of key stats about the directory. You can see how many services we have listed on there, how many registered users we have, how many organizations, and then how many taxonomies, which is essentially the number of different categories that we've set up. And so if I go into services, this is where you can see a long list and many pages of all of the services that we have listed for our new directory. And I can filter those by various things, or I can search, for example, for services to do with dementia. So let's take a look at one of these. So these are dementia-friendly film screenings from Greenwich Picture House. So at the top of this page, I can manage all of like the basic information about the service. So the name, the parent organization, the description, and the website. If I go down a bit further, I can see the different taxonomies. So these have all been set up by us at Greenwich. Different local authorities might use different taxonomies based on the services that they have and suits them. A bit further down, I can add contacts for the service. I can have multiple contacts if I need them. I can add the location of that service, and importantly, can capture quite detailed accessibility information, so it's really clear to residents whether that service will be accessible for them or not. We haven't added fees for this because we don't know the cost of individual cinema screenings, but hypothetically, I could go through and I could add who the fees for, the amount, and the type it is. Let me get rid of that. The same with opening times. Like we haven't put opening times for the service because we don't know when the screenings are. But again, I could add. I'm not sure if you can see this pop up, but I can add any day of the week and the opening time and the closing time for that service as well. Further down, there's even more information I can add. We can add links about other things that are relevant. At Greenwich, we've got quite a big focus on accessibility, so we've been trying to link to additional venue accessibility information where that's present. The suitabilities, so these are filters that we have on our public-facing directory. So I can filter services by services that are suitable for someone with dementia, for example. And then I can also add things like ages. I can decide when this is visible, if I want it to come down after a certain date. And I can add labels, which we can use to kind of categorize things internally. We then have this quite useful section at the bottom, which is a bit of like an experimental area where we can add in new questions and we can still surface that information via the API. So for example, this one here, this is the Care Quality Commission location ID. So this is a bit like Ofsted ratings, but for care homes or home care providers. If I put in the location ID of a care home, then on that listing on the front end directory, it will pop up this widget, which shows what their latest rating was. And then somewhat recently, we did some user testing to understand kind of what information was really useful to people. And we got quite a lot of feedback that understanding like how to actually book onto a service was really important. And we didn't have that. And so we added in this custom question about how can people book onto a service, and if there are specific details about a referral, we can include those as well. Now, some of these changes are actually coming into Outpost as like a future iteration down the line, but for now, we've got them as like little experimental fields down the bottom. If I then flick to the top, just a couple of other things I can see. So I can see some history of kind of who's been editing this listing, any notes if we want to say anything about it, and then feedback from residents. And Finn can kind of show you that mechanism that we can collect feedback down here for people that have feedback on the service listing. So that is like for someone like me at the council who has the responsibility for looking over various listings. This is the view that I have, and this is kind of the detail and the information that I would add to the directory. But as I said, some people don't need this level of detail. And so people that work in the community, people that run local services, get a slightly different view, which is a little bit more stripped back. So let me show you that. Hopefully, again, you can see my screen.
Yeah, I can see the Outpost.
Cool. Does it say Royal Borough of Greenwich at the top?
It does, yeah.
Perfect. Sorry, we're jumping around a few screens today. So this is, let's say I work in the community and the organization I work for is called the Royal Borough of Greenwich. It's a bad example. Then if I log into Outpost, then I only see the services that are relevant to me. So I only see the services that belong to the organization at which I work. I can then go into any of these, and as you can see, I have a slightly different, slightly simpler kind of interface for this. I can go into each of these, I can edit them as I need to for all of these different sections. It's just a slightly kind of more step-by-step approach, which makes that process a little bit simpler, a little bit easier for people, and a bit less overwhelming than having it on one big form. The same is true if I add a new service. So let's go for like Drupal demo 3. It will need to be the third because I've done this a few times. Come and try our new service. You'll see that as I go through, I'm getting like one thing per page. I can go through and add things for the first time, for example. It's quite a nice, simple interface for people in the community. And we've done some testing with various people that run local services, and they found this much easier to use and interact with than our current one that we have. So that is Outpost in a bit of a nutshell. That's where I'm managing information about local services. So as a quick aside, at Greenwich, we received some funding from the Local Digital Fund to develop Outpost even further. So I won't go into all of the detail now, but we've basically been trying to make Outpost more generic so it's easier for other local authorities to pick up, along with some new features that we've been working on too. So it's a product that we're actively developing right now. I'll say a bit more on that at the end. Anyway, as I mentioned, Outpost is kind of half the equation. It lets us manage service information, but it still leaves that task of actually building the public-facing directory. So for that, I'm going to pass to Finn.
Very cool. Thank you, Alex. Let me see if I can work out how to share my screen. Let's go for this one. And I was just Googling local digital fund. Can you see that up on screen now?
Yes.
Very cool. Yeah, no, it's worth mentioning the local digital fund. Actually, I hadn't really sort of connected the dots, but of course, LocalGov Drupal has been massively funded by the local digital fund, and Outpost has as well. So it's a great opportunity, or it's a great example of two open source products being funded and coming together. So we looked at the dementia-friendly film screenings service in Outpost, and we've mentioned that. Let's get that out of the way. Mentioned that Outpost publishes the data in the Open Referral Standard. I put a link to that in the chat as well because that standard is very cool. It defines a common language of the data, which we can then use to interoperate the data between Drupal and Outpost, and indeed any other service, digital service publishing. If we have a quick look at the data that comes out of Outpost, it's all in a relatively easy to read JSON format. If you've ever looked at data feeds, JSON is a bit more legible than others, but again, it is designed for computer consumption rather than human consumption. But we can see that we've got all of the data that was put into Outpost there, the description, the name, etc., all in a nice standardized format. It's worth just mentioning in LocalGov Drupal, we are familiar with the Open Referral Standards. Last year, 2 years ago, maybe, can't actually remember exactly when we started it, but developing the directories within LocalGov Drupal, the Open Referral Standard was very much of interest, and we were aware of the standard. So there is a LocalGov Open Referral module that publishes the LocalGov directory data in the Open Referral Standard. So of course, what we needed to do in this case is not publish it, but consume it. Luckily, Eeks, who led most of the development on the Open Referral Standard, was very familiar with the standard and could see exactly how to exactly, well, not reverse engineer, but develop the other direction, consuming the data. Worth mentioning again, I popped this link in the chat, that Outpost is another open source project and is sitting there on GitHub for anyone to try and use, as is all of the LocalGov Drupal work. So this is the LocalGov Outpost module. So we developed this in LocalGov Drupal sort of namespace, because this is not specific to Greenwich, is generic enough that other councils can reuse it and may well want to consume data from Outpost and replicate this pattern. So that's there for people to jump on and test as well. But let's have a look at it actually in reality in our dev site. So this is the LocalGov Drupal based Greenwich Community Directory dev site, and it's showing the dementia-friendly film screening record that we just saw. So this is the same data being pulled in by a migration job once every hour, hitting that JSON feed and updating the content in Drupal. So we should be able to see all of exactly the same information that Alex was demonstrating. Well, not all of it, but the public-facing information that Alex was looking at within Outpost. You've got the title, the description, the organization, a link to the website, who it's suitable for, how to book, contact details, the all-important location with a nice geolocated pin on the map, and going down to the links that we looked at in Outpost. So actually, suggest and edit is something that you mentioned there, Alex. This is a standard thing in Outpost, I think, where people are encouraged to suggest if there's problems with the data. And so if I do click on this this button, it will take me away from Drupal and back to Outpost, where as a concerned citizen, I can point out that something is out of date, or we've got some information wrong there, and submit that, and that will pop back up into Outpost, where Alex was looking at that feed for content designers to take feedback and improve the data. So that whole feedback loop is really nice. So it's worth mentioning that this data is meant for display only in Drupal. So we do have a content type, which is called Outpost service or some such. And we can go and actually inspect that, but actually we're not expecting content designers to edit any of the content within Drupal. So we'll probably remove those permissions for standard content designers to avoid any confusion, or whilst you can edit the content, it will probably be overwritten by any subsequent migration, which happens every hour or so. But while developing, we do have the ability, obviously, to just jump in and have a look at the fields and the data, and play around with them in Drupal in order to render them as we want on the front end. So this is pulling through all the data, presenting it in a nice Greenwich branded community directory, and allowing us to build out all of the other sort of content pages around the directory and content manage those within Drupal, such as landing pages and different signposting pages, etc. This is a dev site that's work in progress. We haven't launched yet, but we're hoping to soon, hopefully by the end of the year, or at least early next year. But taking one step up above the actual individual service detail page, we can have a look at the very much unfinished services page if it loads. Here's one I loaded earlier, which is the page which will list out all the services. And so, as Alex showed earlier, there's various categories and suitabilities and different fields by which we expect users will want to search for and filter down on their the services they're looking for. So this is all relatively standard LocalGov Drupal directory search API driven faceted search with location on the map, and listing through to allow people to find their dementia friendly. Can I type it? Yes, I can. Did I find it? Yes, I did. They're dementia friendly film screenings. So yeah, that's kind of bringing it all together full circle, which is super nice. Open source things working together in the way that they're supposed to. Alex, there was something else I was going to show, which is just the CQC rating widget that Alex mentioned there. That dementia friendly film service didn't have one, but this one does. And that just pulls through a nice little bit of JavaScript from the Care Quality Commission to confirm that this particular service has got a decent rating in with the Care Quality Commission, which is, I think, a nice extra. And that bit is actually a piece of custom Greenwich field, isn't it, Alex? That's not Outpost standard, is it?
Yeah, it is at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if it did maybe make its way into Outpost as a generic thing going forward, though.
Yeah, so we have this ability to add custom, we've got the LocalGov Outpost, we've got Outpost, LocalGov Outpost, and LocalGov Drupal, and we're trying to make as much of it generic as possible, but we have the ability to have additional fields within Outpost, which is specific to Greenwich, and additional code in a Greenwich-specific module and theme to render information like this. So yeah, as Alex says, pushing that back up to the open source community and sharing it as much as possible is the name of the game. Was I going to demo anything else, Alex?
I don't think so. I think that was everything. That was awesome. Thanks.
Okay, cool. In which case, I will stop sharing and pass back to you.
Thank you. So I'm going to do the final screen share, or maybe the penultimate screen share. So yeah, I obviously, as Finn said, it's a work in progress, and we still have some stuff to do. But I wanted to give you a bit of a flavour of what the final product will look like, and kind of bring things full circle. So does this work? Yeah. So this is a prototype that we have for our directory. This is how we expect it to look when we're done with it. So this is the find support for adult section, but we do have other sections that we'll be doing kind of subsequently next year. A lot of this stuff is kind of typical, what you'd expect on a directory. You can search for things, and when you go through that, this is kind of like the fully mocked up page that Finn was just showing. You can browse categories, things like that. But I guess what I wanted to focus on was that this is where we want to start experimenting with different content types that make it easier for people to find out about different types of support. So, for example, we know that lots of people, when they are new to becoming a carer, that situation can be quite overwhelming. And some carers might not know what kind of support they're actually after and what's available to them. So we've been looking at experimenting with this kind of content type where we're taking a broad topic like support for carers in Greenwich and trying to break it down and I guess give a preview into different types of support available. So we have support groups, advice drop-ins and activities, with these services that are putting through from Outpost and the option to view more support as well. So this is one way in that we're hoping that we can make it easier for people to find services. These tested well before, but we need to do some more testing down the line. And then we're also trying to look at maybe how we kind of pull information together across various topics. So this is more of like a text-based guide if you are completely new to becoming a carer and you don't really know where to start at all. So this was done in kind of collaboration with our like website redesign project. So that this is what we call a signposting guide, and the intention is to signpost people towards the different information they might need when they're new to a situation. So for someone who's just started caring for someone else, trying to signpost towards where they can find out their rights, if they need to understand a health condition in more detail, where they can find local support on the directory, or maybe getting support from the council. One of the issues with our old directory was we were duplicating a lot of this information with our council website. And so we've made a really big effort to avoid all of that duplication and be better at signposting and joining journeys up between our different sites. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly show that. So now I will finally go back to the slides for the last time and just bring things to a little bit of a close. What can you see at the moment, Finn? Can you see the slides?
The demo slide.
Perfect. Okay. So I titled this session not very snappily, using LocalGov Drupal with Outpost to build a user-led directory of community services. And I want to just focus on that point of being user-led. So with LocalGov Drupal and Outpost, we have the tools that we need to build a brilliant directory that really is user-led. For residents, we know that we need to create better journeys and experiences that lead them towards local services. We can't just give them an A to Z of 2,500 support services. We want to actually be able to experiment with different ways of surfacing that information at the right time for them. And so with LocalGov Drupal and different content types, we have that ability, and we're excited to try out different ways and really help people find what they need. But we also need to make sure the content is relevant and up to date. And for that, we need to empower the people that maintain the directory to and give them the tools that they need, so it's really quick and easy for them to maintain it. We don't want this to get in the way of their day jobs, and Outpost is helping us to kind of achieve this by giving them a simple, easy to use tool that can just slot alongside what they're doing at the moment, but still gives us kind of that good data quality that we need to build a good directory. With this kind of technology setup as well, we also have the capability to look beyond our directory and think about maybe what other products or services we might develop that can meet more specific user needs. Now, there are loads of ways we could use the data that we have in Outpost, and it's going to be, in theory, relatively easy for us to do so, given we're using that data standard and the APIs that we have available to us. So we could make things like standalone Finder, like find a childminder service, for example, or perhaps there are other Finder things that we might want to develop where we see value of having that separate to the main directory. We might want to look at how we kind of curate support in a single place around things that are super topical, like cost of living. How do we better help people understand the support that's available for that? And we're also having quite a lot of conversations about the people that are involved in referring residents to local services. Like, what do they need that isn't currently part of our directory? Like, do they need different tools that help them signpost towards local services? But knowing that we have that kind of consistent data behind all of that is really good. it feels like there are endless possibilities we have, but there's a certain comfort and excitement in knowing that we now have the tools to give them a go. So that was what I wanted to cover today. It's a bit of an overview of how we're doing directories at Greenwich. If you want to know more, please do drop me a message. I could talk about this for days, so please do. We also do regular show and tells if you want to come along to those, which I'm happy to extend the invite to. As part of our funded projects, I'm trying to lead a bit of a community around Outpost with the help of our partner TPX, where we come together with people from loads of different local authorities who are either using Outpost or interested in using Outpost. And we meet once every couple of months to talk about the roadmap, share best practice and things like that. I'm hoping one day it kind of gets to a similar stage as LocalGov Drupal, but it's quite early stage at the moment. So anyone's welcome to that. If you'd like to join that, let me know, drop me a message. But ultimately, we'd love you to try things out. I think Finn has dropped some links in the chat. But yeah, it would be great to see others kind of using some of the stuff that we've built. So do let us know if you're interested and give it a go. Happy to lend a helping hand where it's needed. I think that's everything. So I can kind of hand over to everyone else. So if you have any questions, any reflections, any ideas, would be great to hear from you.
Awesome, thank you, Alex. There are a few questions coming up in the chat, which disappears every time you stop sharing a screen, which is so annoying. Let me just try and get it back up again. Why does it do that? So there was a question around so the tech stack of Outpost from Ryan Hammersmith and Fulham, saying, can you talk about how easy it is for councils to pick up and use Outpost? It's written in a different language to Drupal, and developers might not have the skills to use. To which I briefly replied that it is written in Ruby on Rails, I believe. And so yeah, is that a consideration? What advice would you have for other councils on that front?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that's one of the challenges with like scaling open source products across local authorities. Yeah, I think we hope that Outpost is now in a position where it doesn't need much work. You could use it now and not do much to it. I know, for example, we're working with TPX and they provide support, but we're hoping over time as it grows, there are more options that can support local authorities to host that if they don't have the skills in house to do so. But I'm kind of actively working with TPX and we have a roadmap about how to improve it. So if there are kind of specific things that you think would be really useful, it would be great to hear them, and we could talk about where that might fit on the roadmap or some changes that we'd like to see there.
And then I guess I briefly mentioned in my response to that if you don't need to make any changes, then it's mainly about just hosting and support for a Rails app, essentially, which is that relatively low cost or effort?
Yes. I mean, our hosting. Can I say our hosting costs are very minimal for this going forward compared to our previous license? I think I guess I can say we think it'll probably be like £1,000 or £2,000 a year hosting, but that might be very dependent on how we're doing things at Greenwich. But yeah, I don't think we're anticipating that to be much money.
And Karen asked if someone wanted to use only the content type, just the sort of LocalGov Outpost portion without necessarily using Outpost. So use the service detail content type that we create in that module. Would that be possible? And just content manage it? Which I think is an interesting question. Eeks responded to that in just trying to paraphrase, but basically it's a content type which you can create your own anyway. So like you don't necessarily need LocalGov Outpost in order to create custom content types in LocalGov directories. You can add more content types and configure them how you want them. I guess there might be some advantage to structuring the content type in the same way as the local open referral standard, which Outpost is very close to. I think a certain amount of flexibility there, but there are certain standards there. So, however, with the LocalGov open referral module, we've already got the ability to map fields to open referral standard fields and actually publish, kind of like rewire a content type to be published in open referral standards. But it's a good question, Karen. Yeah, it'd be interesting to explore that further. There's some questions from Michael Brown. A few questions. Sorry, the really small writing, and I've lost my reading glasses. Michael, are you there? Would you be able to vocalize your questions?
Yep, hopefully. I think it was just so. In terms of the service directory and bringing it across, have you created everything fresh in Outpost, or have you managed to migrate it from a previous service directory? Would be the first question.
We tried to migrate it and didn't do very well. That was because of the data quality that we were coming from. In theory, you can do like bulk uploads into Outpost if you're using the right. There's like a CSV, and you can use that to bulk upload a load of stuff into Outpost. But yeah, the directory we're coming from, the data quality was so poor, it just wasn't possible. So we did go through the process of rewriting all of them, which took like 2 content designers and myself probably between like 4 and 6 weeks, not like full time, just kind of here and there. Once you get into the flow of it, it was surprisingly easy. But yeah, I do think if possible, if you're coming from a place with better data quality, then it makes sense to try and do an import into Outpost.
Okay. So having done that process and then looking at the services going forward, are you devolving the management of the service pages to those services in terms of if it's a charity or a local community group, do they manage their own pages? And if so, how are you dealing with that process? Is there workflows in place, or how have you dealt with security issues of allowing external users to log in and edit?
Yeah, good points. So we'll devolve ownership back to people in the community. They already have that on our old directory, so for a lot of people, it won't be a surprise. It will be a case of kind of moving them across to the new system. For others, the uptake is hard, and I could do another talk about the challenges of trying to get people to update information, and I think there are lots of opportunities in there. So yeah, we're trying to work with other people in the community who might have like better connections to these local services to update that. But yes, ultimately they will have full access if they want to edit them. In terms of security, so everyone has to request an account kind of manually, and then we approve that. And then for any information that goes on the directory, there's an approval workflow in place. So nothing would appear on the directory unless it had been approved by people that we specify within the council. So we can reject changes if we decide that they're not appropriate. And we have a bit of like a style guide or a like content guides in place for that to make it clear what we do and don't list on the directory.
Thanks. And just a final question. Obviously, this is integrating Outpost with directories. Has there been any consideration of integrating that with the event system in LGD so that events could be created based on the service pages from this directory?
There hasn't, but that's a very interesting idea. I don't know whether Finn or Eeks from the call have any thoughts about that.
I don't with the events, but that is interesting. Eeks, have we thought about anything to do with like directories and events linking up?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. And passing events around is also quite an interesting job. I don't think Open Referral has a sound for it. iCal till now has been the most successful, but it would certainly be an interesting thing to do.
Okay. Yeah, there's one for the future. And you mentioned also the geolocation to postcode search within the directory. So that is something that's on the roadmap for the next release of the Greenwich Community Directory to have a proximity search. And Eeks mentions there that the LocalGov Directories does have a geo integration with proximity search, which I think Adnan at Croydon did a bunch of work on, and subsequently Eeks. So that is something that is available and is coming soon.
Brilliant, thank you.
And I think that's about all we have time for. I'm sorry for just letting it run right up to the minute. I should say a couple of words whilst I'm saying that. What should I say? Here I've got some things to say. Oh yeah, so thank you, Alex, of course. Thank you to everyone for coming. I hope you found it useful. Do carry on the conversations in Slack and carry on asking questions. Thank you to our sponsor, Home Connections, who have made lots of this possible. And there's lots of other sessions this week, which I've just got up on screen. If you go to lou.mar/localgovdrupal, you can see there's one in 15 minutes on introducing our latest features of HTML publications for LocalGov Drupal. There's one at 4 with me talking about upgrading LocalGov Drupal to Drupal 10 and beyond and looking at the release cycles. There's more tomorrow with accessibility and contributing and the Open Digital Cooperative AGM for the members of the co-op, and more on Thursday. So yeah, have a look on lou.mar/localgov Drupal for that. I think that's all from us. So yeah, thank you ever so much. Alex, any last words?
No, just thanks all for coming. And yeah, please do drop me a message on Slack or email if you want to chat some more.
Great. Well, thank you all, and thanks for the questions. Thanks for the conversation. Thanks for coming, and see you at another session soon, I hope.